I still hear the snap of a twig under my boots, even now, as I sit in my cramped ranger's cabin watching the wind claw at the shutters. The first thing I noticed that night, before the sky went black as oil, was the smoke curling from the old fire pit near Pine Ridge, still rising in lazy spirals despite the frost that should have snuffed it out hours ago. I'm Sam Whitaker, a seasonal ranger for the Adirondack Wilderness, a job that's mostly paperwork, trail maintenance, and the occasional lost hiker. Tonight, the radio crackled with a call that should have been routine. Ranger Whitaker, we've got a missing report. 2 hikers, last seen at the 7-mile marker. No signal, no trailwear beyond that point. I checked the map, noted the coordinates, and headed out, the flashlight in my hand feeling heavier than usual. The trail was quiet, the only sound the hush of snow settling on the pines. When I reached the 7-mile marker, the world seemed to have been erased. The pine needles were trampled in a perfect circle, about 10 feet across, as if someone, or something, had stood there and examined the ground. In the center lay a battered, water-soaked backpack with its lid yawning open, spilling a half-frozen, blood-stained snack bar onto the snow. I knelt, feeling the grime on my gloves, and saw a set of footprints leading away, each one dragging a shuffling, uneven weight. I followed them, the light from my headlamp flickering as the wind howled through the trees. The footprints led to an abandoned campsite, the kind the park brochures warn you about. An empty canvas tent, its seams torn, a broken stove with soot still blackening the surrounding snow. Inside the tent, on a makeshift cot, lay a tattered journal, its pages swollen with moisture. I flipped it open with a gloved finger. Day 3. The forest whispers. We hear voices at night, pulling at the edges of our thoughts. The fire won't stay out. We tried to leave, but the woods keep us. The last entry was a frantic scrawl, smeared with something dark. It sees us. It wants us. A cold surge ran down my spine. I heard a rustle behind the tent, something moving among the branches, slow and deliberate. I raised my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness, only to reveal a row of human-sized footprints surrounding the campsite, each one marked with deep, claw-like gouges that split the snow like a knife. The marks didn't belong to any animal I knew. My radio crackled again, the voice of the dispatch trembling. "Sam, do you copy? You're not supposed to be out there. We have a situation." I tried to answer, but a low, guttural moan rose from the trees, a sound that seemed to vibrate the very air. It wasn't a wind, not an animal, but something that sounded like a chorus of distant, dying breaths. I turned, heart pounding, to see a figure stepping out from the shadows. It was tall, gaunt, its skin the color of bark, eyes hollowed like empty hollows in a log. It held a twisted branch, polished smooth by whatever had used it. In its hand, a small, half-burned piece of paper fluttered. Another missing person report, the name already faded. I raised my hand, the flashlight shaking, and the creature tilted its head, as if studying me. Then it spoke, not with words, but with a thought that slammed into my mind. "You will join the fire." The wind gusted, snuffing my flashlight. The world went black, the only sound the crackling of a fire that was not there but felt like it was already burning inside the trees. When the morning crew finally found my ranger's cabin, the door was ajar, the fire pit still smoking. Inside, the logs were arranged in a perfect circle, and on the floor lay my own notebook, its last entry handwritten in a trembling script. "I'm sorry. I should have turned back." The page after that was blank, except for a single fresh set of footprints leading straight into the woods, disappearing into the mist. Story 2. I still hear the crunch of pine needles under my boots, the way the wind steals the scent of damp bark before it even reaches my nose. It was the 3rd night of my solo patrol on the Osprey Ridge Trail, when the radio crackled, a voice half lost in static. "Ranger Hayes, we've got a missing hiker, last seen near the old fire lookout. Return if you can." I turned the engine off, the Jeep's headlights slicing a thin wedge through the darkness. The road behind me vanished into the black, and the only sound was the low thrum of my own breathing. I followed the narrow fire road up the ridge, the sky bruised violet, the moon a thin, nervous smile. The lookout stood silent, its glass shattered like a spider's web. No footprints led to the door, only a faint circle of disturbed snow that glowed faintly in the moonlight. I stepped out, flashlight trembling, and the beam fell on a small makeshift campsite half buried under a drape of spruce branches. A rusted metal kettle, a cracked coffee mug, a child's stuffed rabbit with one eye missing, objects that seemed abandoned for years, yet still warm as if someone had just set them down. My pulse quickened. I knelt, fingers brushing a thin layer of snow that had settled on a notebook, its pages fluttering in the wind like a dying bird. The entries were in a shaky hand, dated 3 weeks ago. Day 2. The noises are louder at night. The trees, they seem to move when we're not looking. The last line was a single, jagged stroke. They're watching us. I felt the hairs on my arms rise. A thin, coppery scent, rust, old blood, clung to the air. I heard a snap behind me. I spun, flashlight whirling, but saw only the dark silhouette of the forest. The wind had grown louder, rattling the loose boards of the fire lookout. Something brushed against my boot. Dry leaves, or perhaps a hand. I forced myself to step back toward the road, but the snow had thickened, forming a shallow trench that seemed to pulse under my weight. A distant howl split the night, a low, mournful sound that didn't belong to any animal I knew. It rose and fell like a lament, drawing nearer. The radio in my pocket buzzed, a burst of static, then a voice. My own, distorted, whispering, "Don't go back." My heart hammered. I fumbled for the radio, but the device was dead, its screen black as the sky. I pressed forward, the path now a narrow ribbon of ice, the campsite disappearing behind me like a memory. The forest closed in, trees leaning, their branches intertwining into a vaulted ceiling. Shadows moved just beyond the reach of my beam, flickering as if something behind me turned its back and watched. When I finally reached the edge of the road, the Jeep's engine sputtered to life on its own, a faint, guttural growl. I drove down the ridge, the lights flashing across the trees, catching glimpses of shapes, human silhouettes perched on stumps, eyes reflecting my own flashlight. I couldn't tell if they were people or something else. The road ended at the ranger station, but the doors were ajar, the inside empty, a thin layer of dust covering everything. My hand trembled as I pushed the door, the hinges crying out. Inside, the same notebook lay on the desk, its final entry fresh, ink still wet. "They're inside. I can't. I'm sorry." I turned, flashlight in hand, heart pounding against my ribs. The darkness beyond the doorway seemed deeper, more intent. I could hear the wind sigh through the cracks, and somewhere far away, a child's stuffed rabbit lay half buried in snow, its empty eyes staring straight at me. I haven't left the station since. The radio is silent, the lights flicker, and every night the wind carries the same mournful howl, as if the forest itself is waiting for me to turn the page.